Hey, folks. Welcome to the pre-show. Just about getting ready to roll here. We got about 2 minutes and we go live over on Odyssey Radio. Subspace Odyssey Radio. Just checking my stream over there. Checking our time here. Looking good there. Boom, boom, boom. How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to the pre-show, which is nothing to shake a stick at right home about or sing the high praises of. It's just the pre-show. We're getting all set up. So welcome. For those of you showing up, haven't seen anybody in the chat quite yet, but I see you all stacking up in numbers. And so it's good to have you here. Come on over to the chat if you would like. You can chat amongst yourselves during the first hour of the show, of course. We are on radio, and I cannot take calls at this time over on the radio. It messes with my system for some reason, and we still haven't figured out why until I upgrade all my technology. And this, by the way, doesn't go anywhere. That just hangs there. That's for the extra mic. There it is. That's the extra one, which we never use because we don't have anybody in studio ever, which we could do that. I think that would be kind of fun to have some people in studio, in situ, as it were. So tonight should be an interesting romp into wokeness and totalitarianism. So, and then we'll have the captain's cabin afterward for a little bit. We got about 15 seconds. So we're going to go dark and we'll be back. Everybody sit tight. We'll be right back.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. I'm your host, Scotty Roberts, and this is my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on Subspace Odyssey Radio, where you can hear this show every time we broadcast it in audio format only over on the radio station. That's over at odysseyradio.com. Odyssey spelled O-D-Y-S-Y radio.com. So you can go on over there, hear us in audio. You can hear all the archives over there. You can also join us, as many of you are, over on my YouTube for the simulcast in video. You can also, and that's at youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can join the chat room there, the public chat room. And you can also join us over on my Patreon. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Scotty Roberts. You can come on over there and watch the show there as well. The Patreon is there for one reason, and that is to give you an opportunity to help be a patron of this show. And so I appreciate everybody who is one over there now. And if we get that built up enough, we'll be able to do some pretty cool things with this program. So go check it out and check out the episodes that are up over there. And over on my YouTube, remember, there's almost 1,200 episodes, 1,200 episodes of this show over on my YouTube channel. You can check them out, watch them at your leisure. And so I want to thank everybody for being here. Randall Flagg, good to see you. Pearson Castile, good to see you, brother. Glad you both are in the chat room, showing your faces in the chat room, as it were. And anybody else who's listening, you can come over into the chat room, too. You can share your thoughts with each other. And if we go into the captain's cabin too deeply tonight, there will be an opportunity for you to call in and to talk with us. And I've got, are you just going to be my audience over there tonight? Or? Oh, I'm doing radio from 9 to 10. Every night. How important is it? This is familial interruption.
Dead people.
Dead people. What about dead people?
So you know how we were hearing lights and sirens?
Yeah.
They even sent out helicopters.
Well, come over here. So what happened? This is my daughter Rowan. So my 11-year-old. So what happened now?
So there was a lot of lights and sirens and stuff going past our houses and our mom's friends' houses and my
Yep, we
friends'
hear
houses.
all the sirens and things. Yeah.
And so me and mom got on this scanner.
Small town sirens, nonetheless.
Yeah, me and mom got on this scanner, and then we realized there was Somerset police and fire and EMS, and then they were also sending out New Richmond people too, and they sent out helicopters. There was a giant
Wow.
ATV and car crash coming off the ramp that we used to get to New
Wow.
Richmond.
An ATV?
Yeah.
It's an all-terrain vehicle? A four-wheeler?
Yeah.
Oh. And so, what did you hear? There's been deaths associated with that?
Well, someone was airlifted, so they're probably gonna die.
Oh, well, not necessarily. They don't just airlifting isn't a immediately ringtone of death.
Yeah, but that's usually what happens. People
Oh.
get airlifted and then they.
I think people get airlifted and they wouldn't do it if they all died. So there'll probably be some survivors. That's what we hope. Well, thanks for the update.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm glad. I love you. Bye.
Bye.
All right. There's your latest traffic news from Somerset, Wisconsin. And she said it's important. I don't want to seem cold or callous, but I hope it's not anybody I know. Other than that, it's small town stuff. So that's the latest. She was just sitting out there in the chair off to the left here. And do you want to say something? So there we go. So anyway, back to the show. Welcome everybody to the program tonight. Let's wish our best for whoever was in the big accident. We heard all kinds of sirens going off. So, and going by the main street at the end of our road. So hopefully everything's going to be fine there. And if I don't know who it is, I said, I hope it's nobody I know. Somebody knows them. Somebody loves them. So hopefully there's not a bigger problem than what we've heard so far. Tonight, I want to talk about a big problem in the country. And we could go through all the niceties of the beginning of the show and all the different things we can do and the different places you can go. You can see the scroll bar down below of all the things you can go see from the Intrepid radio site and Son of a Patriot shop and Sword in the Clay and different things like that. Fairylegs.com, patriotpropaganda.com, all of those things. You can go take a look at all of that stuff at your leisure. And in the meantime, though, let's move on with this. There is a big, I would call it one of the biggest problems we face right now in this country is the indoctrination of our youth. And the indoctrination of our youth. And you might want to ask what that's all about. This is something we were being told about when I was a kid in high school in the late 70s. We heard about the indoctrination of our youth. And for as unpopular as leftism is in this country, woke language has really become the unspoken, the unlegislated law of the land these days. The majority of Americans don't believe themselves to be woke, at least by the definition of what wokeism is in America. Oh, you're just not woke, I get told. I go, yeah, I'm plenty awake. Woke has become, the new hip term over the last few years of are you woke? Even when Rocky Stucci and John Ward and I were doing the Situation Room, our political talk show, I think the last time we did it was 5 or 6 years ago. Wokeism wasn't even a thing back then. So this has risen up in a very quick period out of the gradualism that brought us there. And the majority of Americans aren't woke, yet wokeness has an outsized influence at the top of academia. at the top of culture, at the top of business, and all across our media, if you look at that. And the result is the power of this narrative vastly outstrips its actual popularity and its general level of acceptance. You notice everybody's got to be woke these days. You can't say anything without checking to see if your wokeness switch is flipped. This is why you get all the apologies out there for things that get said, and all of the inaneness that comes along with being offended, and all of these things. All of this stuff is a woke issue that we have. I've seen it even on personal levels. When I talked about the thing I have to go to court for on confronting a mom in a local park about her kid's behavior. Parents can't have those conversations anymore and even allow them to get a little heated and then settle down by their natural course, and without somebody being so woke that they've got to file charges against you for saying something in a park, in a public place. The discourse between Americans has become a problem, and especially on official levels, culture, business, media, academia. And the result is the power of this narrative vastly outstrips its actual popularity. And wokeism's permeation into every aspect of our lives. As parents, especially, I'm a parent of 6 kids, 3 of them young enough to still be in grade school and middle school, has the potential not just to reverse all of our hard work as parents raising our kids as upstanding young people, but to strip them of their innocence and the resiliency as well. You tell me that the transgender issues that are going on right now, and the things that small sliver of a community in this country is dictating to the rest of the country, you tell me that does not strip our children of their innocence. You don't need to teach my 4th grader anything about sex, thank you very much, or their sexual proclivities, whatever you might want to call it. So conservatives have long been worried about indoctrination of young adults on college campuses. I remember we were hearing this when I was going to school back in the late 70s when I went to college for the first time. David Horowitz's Indoctrination U, The Left's War Against Academic Freedom, came out in 2009. And that was 20 years after, up to almost 30 years after I went to college. And Ben Shapiro wrote Brainwashed, and How Universities Indoctrinate America's Youth. And that came out in 2010. But what's happening today starts far earlier. But the ubiquity and the power of the woke worldview extends far past the influences of childhood. And it's from cradle to college. And from the big moments to the small, parents are subject to its influence on our kids. And worse yet, the woke want to turn our children into not just automatons, but active child soldiers in their fight to remake our society at its most basic level. Randall Flagg says over in the chat room, trying to corrupt our kids, no doubt. Yeah. And they don't see it as corruption, which is the funny thing, Randall. They see it as pulling kids away from an old mode of thinking into the new. You got to enter the woke world. And so all of this indoctrination and this conformity, it comes with the backing of plenty of funding and money. After George Floyd's death here in Minneapolis, not far from here, on a 40-minute drive from where I live now, but I grew up in Minneapolis. And it all happened, that whole George Floyd thing took place and the BLM riots took place in the neighborhood where I used to have my studio in one of the office buildings there in the uptown neighborhood of Minneapolis. And after his death, the ensuing Black Lives Matter protests that erupted in the summer of 2020, companies, organizations They all reworked their organizational missions to include racial equity and social justice. And by the way, equity is different than equality. Everyone is equal, but not everybody has the same outcomes as on a basis of their equality. I might be equal to you, but you might be smarter than me in one area, and so you get that better job, or you might be better than me in this area, and you get the better job, the better pay, whatever. Let's look at it as a job and pay. Does that mean I'm being treated unequally because I don't make as much money as you do? No. It means that equity would mean that we both make the same thing, everybody's equal, and it's all distributed equally. There is no equity, and there shouldn't be equity in that sense. That's merit pay, which is a totally different topic, so I'm hitting it very lightly here. But we all are equal to pursue the same thing, but there's no equity in that somebody might be better than somebody else at something and do better at it. That's the only point I'm trying to make. So brands posted black squares on their social medias and pledges to do better, quote unquote, do better in hiring, in showcasing diversity. And even if they'd done fine before that, please continue to buy our stuff was actually the unwritten message there. It was the new normal, and we were going to have to get on board or we were going to have to be left behind. And the pageantry was important in all of this. It applied to the pressure on businesses to say all the right things and for organizations to pay up and bring it even. Amazon donated a minimum of 550 copies of the book stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You. And by the way, just so you don't know, I'm going to let you know, anti-racism is racism. And in a nation where everything is racist, when everything becomes racist, nothing is racist. So, moving on from that, there was, they also, Amazon released an accompanying study guide to Wakefield High School in Arlington, Virginia. And in February of 2021, Amazon also funded $8,000 for the fee for one of the book's co-authors, Jason Reynolds, to give a talk virtually to faculty and students. And so Amazon paid for that, for him to be able to do that. And various foundations, J.P. Morgan, Chase & Company, Ford Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and others spent more than $23 billion compared to a mere $3.3 billion for the 9 years previous. And funding racial equity nonprofits in 2020 and 2021. Now, Open Society Foundations, a group founded by George Soros, whose name we've heard a lot of, is one of the funders of the 1619 Freedom School. We still haven't done a show on 1619, though we've made mention of it. But he's a funder of the 1619 Freedom School, an after-school program based on the widely discredited 1619 series by Nicole Hannah-Jones. And Soros funds a variety of groups that reporter Luke Rosiak in 2019 called the Equity Industrial Complex. Now, let me ask you, let's take an aside. Do you think George Soros sits at home and, yes, Smithers, we're going to, he would do it in his accent, yes, Smithers. Is he an evil man? Is he a man who thinks he's doing good? Is he funding certain things to create havoc? Is somebody who is rich enough to own the world, do they do some of the things out of the goodness of their heart? Maybe some do. Or does he do it because he has the ability to do it and to mess with things? This is the big question I ask about Soros. But what I have found is that he generally is a funder of very far leftist progressive causes. And also of things that we're finding are things that could put wedges between parents and children. And that's a general statement, by the way, folks. I'm not getting into it super deep on George Soros. We can do that another time. But they fund local political races. They pinpoint where equity education can be helpful. And they also provide that equity education themselves. And while the very mention of Soros funding All of this sounds like a conspiracy theory. Rosiak points out that it's all out in the open. Everybody knows he funds it. It's in the open. And at least 3 of these groups, Center for Social Inclusion, Policy Link, and the Center for American Progress, are funded by Soros through his foundation to promote open society, according to tax records available through citizenoaudit.org. And the obscene money spent on this indoctrination is important for us to know about because it conveys to us as parents. I don't know how many of you are parents out there. Some of you are, some of you aren't. Some of you had your kids a long time ago. Some of you are grandparents. Some of you are aspiring parents. But it's important because it conveys to us as parents and to the public at large that this is what we're doing now. And if you don't like it, you're racist, you're sexist, or you're worse. You're not woke. And the conformity they demand is instrumental to the leftist cause. And conformity, we've talked about conformity here before, haven't we? When we were talking about the Constitution and the founding, the state's power to have created the federal government, and that it is important that we are nonconformists to what the federal government wants to do most of the time. The federal government is owned by the states, not the other way around. So we all hope we'd stand up for what's right, but generally, people want to be accepted by their peers. They're going to cover up their real opinions to ensure that they are. In the 1950s, a psychologist named Solomon Asch conducted the Asch conformity experiments. You ever heard of these? Each one had real participants and several actors who were all asked to match a line to another line of similar length. The actors would knowingly give the same wrong answer. And about 5% of the participants always went with the group answer. And around a quarter of the participants always gave the correct answer, unswayed by the answers of the actors, who deliberately gave the wrong answers. But the rest would sometimes go along and other times not. So a similar experiment conducted on children in 2017 by scientists Emma Flynn, Cameron Turner, and Luca Lane, Giraldo, found that children are sensitive to the contextual cues of the domain in which they are witnessing norms and vary their own conformity based on such cues. That's a quote, end quote. And they also found that younger children were more likely to conform than older ones. A study out of the School of Psychology, Center for Studies of Psychological Application and Key Laboratory of Mental Health, Cognitive Science of Guangdong Province found this. That's a long name, by the way. They found this, that sustained conforming behaviors among children in situations of relatively low social pressure. In other words, kids wouldn't just conform to the opinions of their peers in the present situation. They would continue to conform to those opinions even the following day, and even under minimal social pressure to do so. And preference falsification occurs because of societal pressure, even without overt threats. What did we say when we were talking about the Constitution? Why do we conform? Societal pressure, the pressure the government puts on us, the false front that they put out that leads the nation to believe that the federal government has the power to do certain things that it does not have. So this is a preference falsification occurs because of societal pressure, even without the overt threats. In his 1997 book, Private Truths, Public Lies, The Social Consequences of Preference Falsification, economist Timur Kuran writes about preference falsification, people covering up their true beliefs and instead representing what they know to be the correct opinion to the outside world. Not what they know to be truth, what they know to be the correct opinion. There was a guy who was Czechoslovakian asked whether he had ever lived under totalitarian rule to experience this kind of preference falsification. And Kieran is not, but he writes, despotic government is not the only source of fear, the only obstacle to overt and candid discourse. A more basic factor is public opinion. Even in democratic societies where the right to think, speak, and act freely enjoys official protection, and where tolerance is a prized virtue, unorthodox views can evoke enormous hostility. People often falsify their preference to conform or to risk being ostracized or worse, or, as we've heard in recent days, being doxxed, being canceled in cancel culture. You got to go along with the woke culture so you do not become somebody who is ostracized in society, whether you believe that thing or not. Hey, Unleashed Jeremy Hansen, I see you out there. Good to see you. A judge called me a nonconformist, Jeremy Hansen says. Well, that's good. I think there should be more nonconformists. I think it is the duty of American citizens to be nonconformist, especially in light of the fact that we have a federal government that was created, a created entity. Let me appeal to all of you. I'm going to repeat this. This is a slight rabbit trail I'm taking here that Jeremy Hansen just made me think of. This slight rabbit trail, I'm dealing with the Constitution. Remember when we talked about this a few weeks ago? How the states created the federal government for a purpose of helping to protect and secure the rights of the citizens. The federal government, let's look at it this way. Let's say if you're a religious person, when does the created become greater than the creator? They don't. You have one prime example in the Bible, in the Old Testament. When did the created being try to become greater than the creator himself? Well, we have the story of Lucifer, who wanted to ascend to the throne of the Most High, become and take over, and so on. And what did God do? He says, I don't think so. And he kicked him, he booted him out. Wars in heaven. And so using that as an example, whether you believe that is a literal thing in your theology and your faith, or you believe it's a story, it's an illustration I'm using it for right now to say, look, the creator is never less than the created thing. Who created the federal government? The states. The states are the creators of the federal government. The federal government is always subservient to the states. But you would think that it's the other way around by the way our nation looks today. How does the federal government come out and say to schools, how did the federal government get to be the boss of the educational system in America? How can they tell the educational system of America, you will teach these certain things or withdraw funding? Who gave them that power? The states gave them certain kinds of power. That power is retained by the federal government through gradualism. It's retained by the federal government because the states kowtow to it. There is capitulation and there is conformity. And so we are all called to be, as citizens of this country, nonconformists. That's just a word on that. And I want you to put that in your pipe and smoke it for a minute. So people often falsify their preferences in order to conform or not risk being ostracized, or even worse. How many times have you seen that? How many times have you done that in your life? You wait to see what the other person is going to be. How many are going to die? And you go, me, because everybody else is. You know, I did that in school. It took me a while before I grew out of that and I became an adult and had a strength to speak my own mind. But we're seeing it happen in America today. It isn't crazy, guys. We're social creatures. We want to fit in with our friends and our neighbors. And now social media has opened the door to this forced conformity. Just look at the recent things with pandemic, with chemicals being pumped into us, with facial coverings we've had to wear, all of those things. Look at the conformity that took place. And look at the movement you got going now. How much do you see out there right now, people saying, because there's trying to start a new one just in time for the elections again. And people are saying, I'm not doing it this time. I'm not conforming to you. And not by your leave. It is quiet in the chat tonight. Everyone moved to another platform. Well, some of them do. I will say I wasn't on all last week. And sometimes, and then I started a platform, Pearson, that asks people if they donate $4 a month to get 30 shows. And a lot of people are like, why should I do that? I can just get it free somewhere else. So thousands of listeners that are loyal can suddenly turn disloyal when you ask them, hey, will you pitch in a couple bucks? Help run this show? Help us go places? I've seen that happen. I'm not saying that's the only reason. It might be that I put out also a late notification for tonight. And because I wasn't on all last week, people weren't used to for a week now coming in here. So that's what happens sometimes. Maybe toward the end of this hour, we'll see that. And there's lots of competition out there as well. Let's think of it that way as well. So we do get lots of it happens a lot, doesn't it, Jeremy? Jeremy knows this himself. So let me move on with this. People falsify their opinions in order to not be ostracized. We see it happening here. Social media has forced that door open of conformity. And we largely haven't experienced that in this country before. And we know each other's opinions and ideas in a way that we wouldn't have 20 years before now. 20 years ago, it was very different than it is now because of social media. We know who stands out as different. We click like to send a message, the message that we're on the same side with you. Oh, yeah, I like that. And we also see who dares to dissent. And I've had people in social media that are friends that they put up something that I vehemently disagree with. And I'm always polite. I'm always professional. And I might say something like, hey, I disagree with that. And I brought this illustration up before last summer when the whole thing about the Supreme Court Roe v. Wade thing was leaked ahead of time. And somebody came out and said, we should do away with the Constitution and so on. And, the rights over women's bodies. And, woe is all of us women. And I said, I came in, and this is a friend. This is somebody I posted on her post a lot over the years. And I said, nobody's going to lose their rights. I said, the federal government, the Supreme Court didn't just take away your right to an abortion. They said, it's not something that falls under the purview of the federal government enforcement. This needs to go back where it belongs, the states. So that's all they did. They moved it back to the states. And I got told off by my friend in a big way. Hey, don't come on here and contradict me. And I said, everybody else, all your other friends are commenting. Why can't I comment what I think? Well, this is my happy place and this is where I need to be. And don't you come in here and contradict me. Okay, fair enough. So I've been nice. I've played nice ever since then. I say things when I have to, but not too much. I just stay away from that page. Now, why? Because you can say what you want as long as it doesn't contradict somebody, especially in social media. And if it contradicts, if I'm going to put up a post that is very controversial topic, I'm going to expect people are going to come in and say something. So I let people know, you can come in anytime you want and argue with me. You can debate me. You can disagree with me. Even on this show, you can disagree. That doesn't mean you're going to get kicked off or booted or blocked from my social media. Just say, if you want to say what you want, say what you want. You have freedom to say what you want, but be prepared to have your point of view challenged by me in a polite way, professional way. So we're seeing it happen all over the place. We know who stands out as different. And children, folks, are no different. They want to please us. They want to please the authorities over them. They're going to repeat the lessons being pushed on them from every direction. Parents, and Jeremy Hansen, I could be speaking to you. You're a parent. You're a parent times 15 or 18 or whatever it is now. But you're a parent of a lot of kids. And so you've had to deal with this push on parents to do certain things and to conform to certain things. And parents have to identify and stop the onslaught. They have to do it now, not after it's too late to resist it. And while wokeness might be new, it's forced conformity, it's targeting children to push obedience to that conformity, that not new concepts. It's pushing an obedience to a conformity that aren't new concepts at all. It was the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini who coined the term totalitarian, or totalitario, he said in Italian. And everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state, he said. No dissent could be allowed. Individualism was impossible if a truly cohesive culture was to be achieved. Now, let me ask you all who are American citizens, do you feel that your government, do you notice that your government says you are individuals and we're promoting individualism, and that it's okay that you dissent with us, especially on matters that are not under our purview to enforce? Do you have the right and the freedom and the constitutionally protected God-given right to speak your mind? Yes, you do. Mussolini said no dissent could be allowed. Individualism was impossible if a truly cohesive culture was to be achieved. So the conformity of totalitarian regimes, whether fascist or communist, always had to begin where? With the children. Children were the great hope of the realized utopian future. They belonged to all of society, not just the family to which they were born. And if they could lead the children to righteous thought, they could become the idealized society. And if children could be convinced into the ideas the totalitarians wanted, their parents would follow, was the way of thinking. And if not, the disobedient parent could easily be removed from the equation. We'll all be obsolete, man or woman. You're right, Randall Flagg. Jeremy Hansen says, absolutely. It's a continuing war watching out for and teaching your children to be an individual. I saw, who was it? This just popped into my head. Who's that? The black show host that does, is it Family Feud now? He used to have a talk show. Bald guy with the big mustache, black dude, suit and tie, and Steve Harvey? Is that his name? Carvey? Stevenson, whatever. You'll know who I'm talking about. But I saw an old interview with him, just a clip that went by, and I thought, oh, what's he talking about? And he was talking with, I think, a black minister about, or a black, doesn't matter, politician of some kind, movement leader of some kind, about what we leave our children when we die. And this minister said to him, I think it was a minister, he said, it's not what we leave our children with, it's what we leave them that they've internalized that's important. And this is what Jeremy was just saying in the chat room. Steve Harvey, that's him. And I don't have the quote exactly down, but he says it's not how much money we leave them, it's the character we leave them with. And that's where Steve Harvey, his response was, Well, I guess I'm not going to leave my kids anything then, because I'm going to leave them with character, and I'm going to spend it all. That was so. Yeah, there's a certain conformity of totalitarian regimes that are going on out there. Mussolini's Children, Race, Elementary Education in Fascist Italy by Eden K. McLean writes on the importance of children and the messaging to children and upholding the fascist state. Quote from the book: children's magazines were especially adept at highlighting the youth contributions to various fascist programs, this author wrote. Propaganda measures and other initiatives within the education system were used to combat what one author in Motherhood and Childhood, a magazine put out by Opera Nationale, a Maternia Infanzia. There is my Italian. Oh. A national network of clinics that delivers children's instructions to parents, termed egotistical individualism. That's children. The system was there to fight egotistical individualism. But even in totalitarian societies, people frown on the indoctrination of kids. Efforts to revolutionize childhood were among the most reviled of Soviet experiments in the realm of culture, writes Lisa Kirschenbaum in her book, Examining Soviet Childhood, Small Comrades Revolutionizing Childhood in Soviet Russia. And it's a bright line not to be crossed. And that's why today in America, it's done so insidiously. Nevertheless, revolutionizing childhood under fascism was still very successful for these regimes. The process went on for generations, but separating kids from their parents proved somewhat harder. So in the first years after the Russian Revolution, for instance, the communist Bolsheviks, they built kindergartens at a fast clip. And the idea was to separate children from their families at a very early age. And as Kirschenbaum writes, in general, they anticipated a withering away of the family unit in favor of the state unit, the collective unit. But Kirschenbaum notes that by the late 1920s, the Bolsheviks were questioning both the possibility and the wisdom of speeding and withering away of the family. And it soon became clear that far from replacing parents, kindergartens would have to rely on their active material and financial support. So what happened in schools had to be bolstered by what happened at home, and vice versa. For so long, parental involvement in education has been seen as the key factor to student success in this country, in America. But as the critical race theory, the CRT battles, gained prominence, that all shifted. Once parents became concerned about CRT in the classroom, the idea that parents should get involved in their kids' education was seen as a right-wing idea. Right-wing nut jobs. When they said that CRT in the classroom, and parents wanted to get involved and say, no, not for my kid. That's a right-wing thing now. And we used to know that involving parents in their child's education was a really good thing. In a 2010 study called Parent Involvement in Student Academic Performance, a multiple mediational analysis by researchers at the Warren Alpert Medical School of Brown University and the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Take a breath after that. Noted that parent involvement in student success had long been a given. Kids are more successful when their parents are involved. Parent involvement in a child's early education, this is a quote, is consistently found to be positively associated with child's academic performance. Specifically, children whose parents are more involved in their education have higher levels of academic performance than children whose parents are involved to a lesser degree. And the influence of parent involvement on academic success hasn't only been noted among researchers, but also among policymakers. who've integrated efforts aimed at increasing parent involvement into broader educational policy initiatives. However, only 11 years later, in November of 2021, 2 years ago, Virginia gubernatorial candidate Democrat Terry McAuliffe said, "I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach." I remember when that was said. I said, "Are you fucking kidding me?" was my response. Did he just say that? I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. How do you feel about that as a parent? Are you a parent? How do you feel about a gubernatorial candidate of your state would be saying something like, "I don't think parents should be involved in telling schools what to teach"? Like, excuse me? The remark was offhand, as McAuliffe would later tell it, and the audience applauded it, though. But parents across the state heard something very different, and they responded at the ballots. And when Republican Glenn Youngkin won that gubernatorial election in Virginia, the outcome was widely seen as revenge of the parents. Youngkin's win represented an answer to the question, who do children belong to? And McAuliffe's brazen attempt to cut the parent out of educational process had shocked even liberal parents into action. It's like things you see nowadays with the whole transgenderism, transgender operate, things like that. The things that the school system, I saw a little clip of a hearing, and I couldn't tell you the names who were involved, but somebody was being questioned. And he was being questioned by somebody in the Senate saying, "Are you telling us that you are promoting that children should be withheld from where that the parents should not be told where their children are if they are undergoing transgender surgery?" And the answer coming out was only for a short time, and they would, well, once you get the procedure done, you don't want the parent to know. Parents need to know all of this stuff as it's happening. And the school system and the educational system, the government education system, is trying to make sure that you as parents don't have that right, and they're labeling you as right-wing whack jobs if you say, "Oh no, not with my kid. This is my kid, not your kid." So when Youngkin's win, it represented an answer to that question in Virginia. Who do the children belong to? They belong to the parents. And McAuliffe's brazen attempt to cut the parents out of education process had shocked even liberal parents into action. Liberal parents love their kids too. Just many times they don't know what they're voting for. They don't understand what they're voting for. So it's not a new concept, by the way, to separate children from their parents for the purpose of indoctrination. It was just shocking that it was being attempted so openly in America, and still is. There was somebody in one of these studies that remained anonymous, so I don't have a name for you, but they offered a cutting analysis of this woke attack on the family. They said, the effort to sow gender and racial confusion among little kids and to impose on little kids a bunch of theories and ways of looking at the world that are totally unnatural and at odds with what little kids understand around them should be situated, I think, as part of the leftist mission to destroy the nuclear family. We've seen this before, haven't we? Soviet Union. The left hates normalcy because normalcy, it's happy, it's bourgeois, and it resists change, it resists revolution. And the great enforcer of normalcy in a society is what? The family. It takes men off the streets, domesticates them in homes, caring for their wives, caring for their children. It creates sacred bonds and sacred loyalties between people that come before politics. Before politics. Before the state. Before anyone else's ideology. It's the ideology of my family. And the left hates this passionately. So their new attack on the normalcy of the family is to convince 6-year-olds not to believe what they see. Now, you have a penis, but really you're a girl inside. You see mommy and daddy, but really there's no such categories. And instead, that's a gender spectrum. What does this woke attack on the family dynamic do to children? Kids are left confused and damaged by this. And that's because the left, that's what they want. And that's what the left wants this, both because they hate it, and when kids see normalcy as normal, and because they know that the revolution will fail unless they can build a large class of people in our society who believe that they hate the way things are and that it would be good to tear down established ways of living. Now, this is supposed to be a bloodless revolution, by the way. This is the revolution from within. Promoting alienation and grievance has always been a central part of the groundwork for leftist revolution. In Mao's China, for example, kids were instrumental in pushing the totalitarian state. In a 1995, so we're talking 30 years ago, piece for Los Angeles Times, writer Roan Tempest lays out how the family stood in the way of that. It says in Roan's article, the late Chinese leader Mao Zedong, although himself a member of the strong Hunanese family clan, realized that political reform was not possible unless people placed the interests of the state above the interests of the family, which up to that point had been by far the most powerful institution in China. Communist leaders were instructed to draw a clear line between themselves and their families. During the Cultural Revolution, youths were encouraged to love Chairman Mao more than their parents, and they were sent to the countryside to learn from the peasants. Parents were attacked by their own children in struggle sessions. Collective daycare centers became the norm. End of quote. So indoctrination was happening at every stage of childhood. Little red guards were the children of China's Communist Party, foot soldiers in the idea that the state should be paramount. And this devotion amounted to children turning in their parents. Zhang Hongbing was 16 when he turned in his mother for criticizing Chairman Mao. He called for his own mother to be shot as a counter-revolutionary. He last saw her as she knelt on stage in the hours before her execution. So in the Soviet Union, the communists kept trying to push the idea that family was secondary to the state. Communist youth groups were a staple of Soviet Russia. Children would become little Octoberists at 7 years old, October, the revolution. Young pioneers at 9, and at 14 they would join the Komsomol, short for, let's see if I can pronounce this, Kommunistический Soyuz Molodjoy, or the Communist Soviet Youth. I think I completely butchered my Russian there. So kids were taught to be like the hero child Pavlik Morozov, who had discovered his father was hoarding grain and informed on him to the authorities. And this propaganda tale was told to children to illustrate expectations. But according to a Los Angeles Times piece from 2002, the story wasn't, as many believed, entirely made up. There was a real boy named Pavlik, whose death was repurposed as a heroic tale. Pavlik's story wasn't really a fairy tale, though. A real 13-year-old boy named Pavel Morozov was killed along with his little brother on the outskirts of his Siberian village in September of 1932. 4 members of his family, his grandfather, grandmother, cousin, and godfather, were convicted of murders in a show trial 2 months later and shot. And so within weeks of his death, Pavlik became a powerful icon in the new pantheon of communist saints, a child martyr worshipped for his feat of heroism of informing on his father hoarding grain. So statues of Pavlik were erected all over Russia. Poems and songs were written about him. He was referred to as Pioneer Number 001. And children were taught to be like Pavlik, to put the state above all, even their family, especially their family. And it was an understandably powerful lesson. Do the right thing, listen to authority, believe what we believe, act how we want you to act, and you'll be celebrated like Pavlik. Don't, and you'll end up in a ditch like his accused family members. Looking to see how much time I have left for radio. Radio station, we got about a little less than 4 minutes left with you. Let's see what we can get to. In a Forbes magazine article writing about her Soviet childhood, Katya Saldak recalls this. As part of our school curriculum, and by the way, do you see where we're going with this? You're starting to make some comparisons to what we're seeing the rudiments of in America. As part of our school curriculum, we discussed the young martyr, Pavlik, praising his bravery and his loyalty to communism, absorbing his story through poems and school books. And Saldak believed that the propaganda would write poems to the great leader Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov was his name. He became Lenin. And a year before the collapse of the Soviet Union, Saldak was feeling jaded. Things were not going as swimmingly as they had to pretend they were going. And one day, moved by the rebellious sentiment in the air, he says, I arrived at school with my red pioneer tie. I had a lousy pupil that, had I been a lousy pupil, I might not have been such a big deal to our teachers. But in the 7th grade, I had a reputation as a straight A student, an activist, and my teacher publicly lynched me in order to teach others a lesson. You are a flaky, slimy person, the teacher repeatedly told me in front of the entire class. Your mother and your aunt were good, trustworthy individuals. They had attended the same school. But you didn't take after them, the teacher continued. You're a traitor. You have betrayed our pioneer organization, our fatherland, the teacher said. And as her story, Soldak's story, illustrates, stepping out of line is always severely punished under totalitarianism. It has to be. If someone is seen as doing their own thing, being independent, thinking for themselves, it might lead to others doing the same. And a breakdown of society will follow. And you know what I didn't do? I didn't pay attention to my clock close enough. And we just went off the air over on the radio station. So if you were listening on radio, I hope you can come and join us over in the chat room, over on the YouTube channel. I can finish this section, but it's really long. And I got a lot of information there. So we're going to pick this up next time. But being an independent thinker, having your parents come in and tell the school, no, you will not teach that to my kids. I will teach my kids. So we can see by history the totalitarian regimes, and we're not done with this yet. We'll pick this up again. But Randall Flagg says that's the real reason for the migrants, I believe. It might be. Jeremy Henson said that would end up with someone getting seriously hurt if it was my kid. Yeah, same here, brother. So let's do this. Let's take a little bit of a break. I would say goodbye to the radio audience, but you're already gone. Hopefully you've come over and joined us over in the chat room over here. Radio audience, live long and prosper. And the rest of you, let's go out to break, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes with the Captain's Cabin. All of you, sit tight. We'll be back.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. How's that for an auspicious re-entry? Oh, man, just as I was about to start talking, I swallowed wrong. So sorry about that. Welcome to the captain's cabin, everyone. Woo! All right, let me take a drink. A little bit of Coke Zero. Is that Coke Zero? No, it's Coke Zero. Sugar-free Coke. That's what I like to drink. And not all the time, but some of the time. Hey, mechanics, good to see you. Glad you're in here tonight. And glad for everybody who made it in tonight. And welcome to the program. Thank you for being here. By the way, if you want to contribute to the ongoing success of this program, such as it is, I encourage you to go over to my Patreon. And for a mere $4 a month, you can have 30 shows a month, and you can help support the cause here. And just look at it this way. If we got 10,000 followers at $4 a month, imagine the things we could do with this show. I'd hire Jeremy Hansen, and he could come over and run his own show over here. So imagine the network we could have, the things we could do. And it's been done over there, which is pretty cool. Patreon is a good place to do it. All Patreon is, when I'm asking you to come over and take a look at that, it's just a site that allows creators, radio people, writers, artists, craftspeople, all of those kind of people can put their wares up there and say, hey, if you want to come and be, we still have rich patrons out there, but they're fewer and far between. Like I use the example of Michelangelo and the Pope. And I see I already lost somebody off our numbers for the show. Oh, he's talking about this thing again. Yeah, it's okay. It's only a couple of minutes. And Michelangelo had the Pope. So he made a living. Some creative people, they need the supporters to make a living. They might offer something good. And if they don't get the supporters, maybe they're not very good. And they need to quit and go do something else. There's that. But remember also today, it's a million different places to put that $4 every month. So if you can afford the cost of a cup of coffee once a month for this show, come on over to my Patreon, show it, and we'll see what amazing things we can do together. And thank you for all of those of you, by the way, who do that already. So Captain's Cabin tonight. I was out all last week. I had different things that I had to simply take most of the week off last week doing radio. And that, of course, is also one of the things that could be avoided with the Patreon. If we've got this to a point where, say, this show, Jeremy Hansen, anybody that does a show that's worth listening to, if that show supports us or offers enough support, we can push other things out of the way instead of making radio have to be the thing that gets pushed out of the way. So hopefully if you enjoy the show enough, you'll help out with that. But I was gone most of last week, all of last week. And if you heard the Sunday morning show, I was gone because I got arrested for missing a court date that I did not know I even had. And I spent 24 hours in jail, Thursday to Friday. So I technically didn't miss the Friday show, but by the time I got home, I was tired enough and fed up enough, even though my attitude is always good. My attitude was good there. I was like, I'm not doing a show tonight. I was thinking all the way through, sitting in jail, thinking this will make a neat show tomorrow night. And so thank you, Barbie D. Patreon is a great place to visit. And by the way, the Patreon, one little handicap, it doesn't have the chat room like we have here in YouTube. But there are things that you can implement and put into place once you're at a certain level at Patreon and you can afford to put out the dollars per month. You can get a fantastic interactive chat system that goes up in there. So that's just as an aside. So while I'm in jail, contemplating my life of crime, I thought that I would come on Friday night, and I didn't. But as most of you know, because I told the story back in April when it originally happened, just a confrontation with a parent whose fifth grade boy had beat up my second grade daughter. And at a big ball game going on at the parks, and I went and looked for the mom, and I found her, and I said, "Hey, we got to talk about our kids." And what ensued from that was a woman who immediately lost her shit, and in my estimation, and started screaming and yelling. And you guys know me; I can get impassioned, but I don't lose my shit. And finally walked away from that. And apparently, and I got a call from a police officer because somebody there in the parking lot. So I got a charge of not disturbing the peace, but disorderly conduct. Why?
So I can do something on it.
What do you want to do on my phone?
So I got there's this thing on TikTok where you can get three gifts, 5 free gifts.
No,
I did it
there's no
on,
TikTok on my phone.
I did it on my phone. You do it on TV.
No, that'll carry you on forever and ever and ever.
Dad,
Does mom know you're on TikTok? You're not supposed to be on TikTok.
Mom knows I'm on TikTok.
Does she know you're doing something on TikTok right now?
Yeah, I literally sent it to her, and she sent it to Rowan.
Well, my phone ran out of juice, and it's plugged in right now, so it's not even
That's
on.
okay.
See ya.
I'll plug it in.
It's plugged in right now.
I can plug it in upstairs. Love you.
All right. So, yes, it is. Run away. So, I don't know why Rainey's letting her do anything on TikTok, because we had outlawed TikTok in our house for our kids. You have to be an adult to figure that one out. So, I don't know what the heck I was saying, but you get the idea. There was this confrontation with this woman. I walked away. Somebody who was there in the 5 or 6 people that witnessed the little exchange called the police and said disorderly conduct. I wasn't even there. Once the police came, everybody had gone home, but they called us up. People knew who we were. We're part of the neighborhood, small town. And so the cop, after interviewing me, said, well, it's got to go to the DA now. Well, no, it doesn't. It's at your discretion. And he said, you may or may not get summons to court for disorderly conduct. I said, okay. I said, I'm perfectly fine with that. If the judge wants to talk to me about disorderly conduct and this incident, I'm there. I said, color me in. And so now that was in April. How much time has passed until last Thursday? From April 25th to last Thursday? April to May, June, July, August. 4 months had gone by. Hadn't heard a thing. Well, the police came and arrested me for missing a court date in May. And they only came here because we called them. I called them and said, I want you to, could you stop by, swing by my house, check out a car there we don't recognize. It's making my kids kind of nervous, blacked out windows, stuff like that. They said, sure, we'll send somebody over. And then they told the cops, oh, by the way, it looks like this guy has a warrant for his arrest for not showing up in court. We talked about this all on Sunday. I'm just recapping now. So I ended up going to jail for not appearing in court. I never knew I had to appear in court. I never heard a thing about it. Found out subsequently they had an address of mine from 2 houses ago. Don't know where they got that one. But because I gave them my address during the interview, my email, my phone number. They don't do any follow-up. If you miss a court date, they don't send out a automated message from the court on your phone, text message like you get from doctors' offices and medical systems and stuff like that. Oh, no. You don't get that saying, hey, you missed a court date. You better reschedule that. You got like 5 days to reschedule. If we don't hear from you, we'll have to issue a warrant. No. They immediately issue a warrant. They sent 3 squad cars to come and get me. So in our little podunk, little tiny town where everybody kind of knows everybody. And the cop even knew who I was. And so all of that to say, that's why I missed Friday. I got to spend a night in the county jail. I was dressed in orange, for those of you who weren't there Sunday and heard this yesterday. I got to wear orange. They strip searched me. Face this way, lift your ball sack. Let me look under there. So bend over, spread your cheeks. Let me look in there. And I said, yeah, I got a bazooka in there. I kept my good nature. I tried to have a sense of humor. And same kind of tone of voice. I talked to all the guards the same way I talk to you right here. And then they took me in to see the judge. And they, not only was I dressed in orange, they shackled my feet together, and they put a shackle around my waist and handcuffed me to the shackle around my waist. So I had T-Rex arms. And I told the guard that was shackling me up, I said, is this really necessary? And because guess what? It wasn't even in a courtroom. It was in a cinder block room in the jailhouse with a televised meeting with the judge. And they had to shackle me for that. And I said, hey, I got a good idea. I said to the guard, you got a neck shackle? He goes, what good would that do? I said, come on, impressions. I said, you've got me dressed in orange, shackled by the feet, shackled by the waist, handcuffed, so I can present myself to the judge. I said, what a good first impression is that? I said, might as well throw on a neck shackle too. And then I hit him with my elbow and I said, I'm just kidding. And he laughed and all of that. So, they thought I was going to run away, I guess, Barbie D. So, yep, 3 squad cars. So I'm a dangerous man. And so, and it was, when they told me they had to arrest me and take me in, I said, well, you know what? My 11-year-old is inside and I need to call my wife. I said, why don't you just come on in the house? Let me call my wife. And so they walked in the house with me. And, the officer did me a big, he says, I won't handcuff you on the drive in. I said, well, I appreciate that. And he told me he thought all you got to do is go down there and sign a paper, set the new court date, and you'll be home in an hour. Well, he was either lying to me or he didn't know. I got there at about 4:30 in the afternoon on Thursday, and I had to appear before a judge to reset the court date. Something could have been done by a clerk in a heartbeat. They didn't even question me as being, and I was released on my own signature bond. And the judge says, now you promise you're going to show up? He says, if you don't, he says, it'll cost you $1,000 if you don't show up. And it's on your signature. And I said, you know what, Your Honor? I said, I'd have appeared for the first one if I'd known that I had a summons. I said, I certainly have no problem showing up for the second one. So I got to show up on Wednesday, day after tomorrow, and let them know if I'm going to defend myself or if I'm going to need an attorney. I'm going out to lunch tomorrow with an attorney friend of mine just to see why do I keep slipping on this? Not disturbing the peace, disorderly conduct. I kind of perceive that as being I need to go in and defend myself against a parking ticket or something. Disorderly conduct. So I'll go in and I'll talk about that, and we'll find out if I need to have a defense or not, or if I can go in and just give my version of events. So I think the woman that was part of this already went to court back in May. And of course, there's no contact between any of us, and I had no reason to contact her or her me. I don't even know what the outcome of her situation was. But I will go in and say, and I have a clean record, so I'll just go in and say, you know what? This was a parent talking to a parent. And it got a little heated for a couple of minutes, and then it was done. It was over. If that is disturbing the peace, or I'm going blank again. I go blank every time I talk about this. Not disturbing the peace. Disorderly conduct. If that's disorderly, two parents can't come and have a heated discussion. And mine wasn't heated until I had to talk over her. So yada, yada. You get it. So all of that to say, that's where I was last week. And I miss Uncle Dave. I miss him being here, him calling in every night, and we talk about these things right here in the captain's cabin. So if you guys want to call in, you can. Otherwise, I'm not going to stick around too long here tonight. Disorderly conduct. That's it, Barbie D. Disorderly conduct. And, I did say somewhere along the way, I said to the district attorney when he interviewed me about an hour before I had to go see the judge, just to find out what the situation was. And I said, I find it very interesting that our system is set up it's not set up to inform you if you missed a date. There's no benefit of the doubt given to the person who has to show up in court. So you miss court, ignorance of the law is no exception and no excuse, and you're going to be treated like a criminal now. We'll arrest you. No, it should have been, they should take a look at what are you being charged with? If somebody misses court, why is there not a system in our judicial system that's set up, and I realize this is by county and by state, but that says, hey, look, we got his email, we got his phone, maybe he didn't get the notice in the mail, so let's send out an email alert or a phone alert and say, hey, you missed your date, you need to call in. Or you need to come in and reset your trial date or your appearance date. No, that's not done. How expensive would that be? For the court system, maybe a little expense to set that up ahead of time so it's a system-wide thing. But how much would that cost the court system to text somebody an email or email somebody and let them know they missed their date? And you got 5 business days or whatever to reset your date, or we'll have to issue a warrant. Give the citizen the benefit of a doubt. But no, instead, they spent the money and sent 3 cops and 3 squad cars out to pick me up. And then spent the money to house me in jail overnight. Which they get money for that stuff anyway. That's why they have to keep you a certain number of hours. But so I found the whole thing very distasteful. I kept a good attitude, though. I kept my wits about me. And I was asked on Friday morning how I was doing after sleeping on a concrete slab for the night. And I said, my buoyant resilience and my effervescent personality is a little bit waning this morning, but I'll be good as the day draws out. So, I don't mind Pearson. I'm not going to stick around too much longer, though. Disorderly, Scotty, that's me. So, anyway, there it is, folks. And Pearson, as a matter of fact, let's save it for another night, because I think I'm going to draw this to a close in just a couple of minutes here. But I do want to thank you all for being here, despite the fact that I wasn't here all last week. I didn't disappear. I just disappeared. So I appreciate your being here. I appreciate your time. I appreciate those who are supporting the Patreon. I appreciate that helps support this show. If anybody is here that would like to do that, you can just go over there and you can figure it out. It's pretty cool. And that's it. That's all I got. And Pearson, let's talk another time. I'll have you call in. I know I kind of called for it, but it's half an hour since we went off air. So I think I'm going to call it quits for tonight. It's Monday, Labor Day. Oh, by the way, happy Labor Day, everybody. Maybe that's the reason we don't have a lot of people in tonight, too. As somebody asked way over at the beginning. So Hope you had a good holiday weekend, and we'll see you again on Wednesday. I don't know if we'll be back for Robertson on Tuesday. Now, we have been so out of Robertson. It's been about 3 months since Wendy and I have done a show, but keep in mind, she had fallen ill for a while. She had some hospital stuff going on, testing going on, and then the stuff with her dog, Henry, and one thing after another. And it has left her in a place where she hasn't really been able to do much with Robertson. Not that she doesn't want to. We even scheduled it one week, a few weeks ago, said, we're back. And something came up and we had to stop. So we may or may not be here tomorrow. I don't think so because I haven't talked to Wendy this week yet. But having said that, we'll definitely be back on Wednesday. So thanks for being here. And everybody, I want to thank you for your time. And thank you for your support of this show. And so right now, all of you, live long and prosper.